It was about understanding how employment happens, which is a fancy way of saying how to get a job and how people are given jobs, how they find jobs, and stuff like that. And I'm going to try to net it out for you as fast as possible. Elements of this video are included in other videos, but oh well. The number one thing to take away from this video is to understand that getting a job is about trust. It's about trust. I've talked about this a lot. Trust is what gets you the job. That means to get a job, you need to convince somebody to trust you enough to pay you. That's it. That's it. And I know that sounds really simple and everything. Every other thing related to getting a job comes back to that one thing. And this is so important that people understand it before they understand anything else. Should I use LinkedIn? Should I go to this conference? Blah, blah, blah. All of those other decisions are based on this one decision. Is what I'm about to do going to promote people's ability to have trust in me to do this job? That's it. And it's so important that you understand that employment is about trust. So there's a couple of secondary things you can kind of infer from this. Number one, anything that you do that detracts from your thank you for that. Anything you do that detracts from your ability to be trustworthy is going to hinder your ability to have a job. I love Firefly, and there's it's all about reputation. Your reputation with me, Malcolm Reynolds, is solid, is real. My wife loves to talk about this all the time too. Reputation is a fancy way of saying you can be trusted to do whatever it is that you say you're going to do, and that is sort of a part of the employment equation. Everybody along the way is going to have to be convinced that you can be trusted to do what it is you think. And that includes you, starting with you. You have got to convince yourself, and there's other videos about, mental frame of mind and mental preparation to get started on a career path. But you've got to trust yourself to do the job. That means, I know he can get the job, but can he do the job? I'm not arguing that with you. I'm not arguing with that with you. If you know that movie reference, you're awesome. I know he can get the job, but can he do the job? So it's all about trust. And it's not just the person who's going to get you the job. It's the person who's going to get you the interview with their manager who's going to say, and I quote, "You'd be an idiot to not hire this guy." That's how employment happens. It's not just getting the person who's going to pay you to trust you. It is, but secondarily, it's getting all the people, in your camp to also trust you, and that begins with you. And then beyond you, it's the person next to you. It's the person at your meetup. It's your best friend. It's your spouse. They got to trust you. They're trusting you to make them money and keep them healthy and stuff in some cases, not all, but so you got to get people to trust you. And the way you get them to trust you is to become authentic and to produce actual value. And for yourself, proof for yourself. So that's the next part of this, how employment happens. In order to get people to trust you, you can be the most trustworthy person and have the most skills of all, unless you can prove it. And I have a story about this. So one of the guys that I helped to mentor, he ended up at Columbia. He's obsessed with AI, obsessed with it. He was brilliant. He taught himself all the stuff to do his own AI models. He would come in and we would have mentoring sessions together, and I had no idea where he was coming from. He was like writing his own neural net programs and all kinds of stuff. I mean, the guy was a genius. He was a genius. His brain was so sharp. He had a little bit of a hygiene problem. I had to once tell him, you need to have a shower before you come here. And, says the bike packer guy, right? But he was just so brilliant. But you know what? When it came time for him and employment is, in this case, it's not employment, but it's the same idea. So he had to go to college. So it came time for him to go to college. He had extremely rich parents. His mother was a vice president and executive on a board at a very high end tech company, which I will not name. and their family had all gone to Columbia or Ivy League schools and stuff like that, and he was getting ready to go to college with all of this great knowledge. And I mean, this kid, anybody would be so lucky to have them in their college or to have him work for them, right? And I knew this, and I wanted to be able to say this, and so it came time to give, to help them out, help them go to school. And I was always in kind of a dilemma. I was like, do I write a letter of recommendation? And people would ask me all the time, can you write me a really great letter of recommendation? And I always felt kind of dirty about doing that because I was also getting paid. They were paying me to mentor them, and then they were also, having me write them a letter of recommendation. It was almost like they were paying me to have them, write. I don't like that. I don't like that. In fact, I stopped writing letters of recommendation because there's a couple of cases where I took an exception to that because I'd been with them for 6 years, some of them. But most of the time I didn't. It was, if you pay me to mentor you, I'm not automatically going to rate you, a glowing, thing. And I actually failed a girl in French. I was a French lab instructor, and I was dating her, and I failed her because I just can't. She was so bad. Anyway, the point is that this poor guy had nothing to show for his intelligence. Nothing. He had nothing. I kept telling him every time he was coming to me, every single time he would come to me, he would tell me, he would show me some really cool thing. He just wanted, he was learning all the time. The guy was such a natural autodidact, but he also had a problem that I share. I have the same problem. He was easily bored. So he would like work on a thing, and then he would work on another thing, and he'd work on another thing. And then he'd come to my mentoring session, and he didn't have any questions or anything. He just wanted to sit there and talk about all the cool stuff that he'd done because nobody could even talk to the guy because he was talking about things that were so far above the heads of most adults even. And I would just sit here in awe of him. I'd say, yes, teach me your ways. I'm here for you, because, he just wanted somebody to talk to. And I would reflect back what I could to help him on his way. And every single time as his, mentor, I would say, okay, now, how are you going to share this with others? And he's like, well, I don't know. And it was just like his brain just fried from the question. Why would I care about sharing it with anybody else? I don't really need to. It's just fun. I just like it. I'm like, well, you need to have something. You need to have something to show for what you're doing so that you can produce, somebody else can look at that and go, damn, that's cool. And not just me. I mean, I know you like showing me, but how are we going to show other people so that we can help you, get a really great, entrance into whatever, or to get a job or something. I mean, other people at his age, by the way, had already had jobs. We had one, they already had jobs. We had people working for solar energy companies. They had 16-year-olds doing all kinds of stuff in the tech realm. Coding C for a software company, because why? Because they had produced stuff, even silly stuff that was in their GitHub, and they could talk about the stuff that they had produced, and they could get an employer, even at 16, they could get them to hire them, and very many of them got really excellent jobs. But this one hyper intelligent, I mean, intelligence wise, I don't like doing this, but his ability to comprehend very complex ideas and to produce very quantitative mathematics in his head was over 9,000. The guy was crazy, but he could not get a job. It was one of these, I know he can do the job, but can he get the job? No, he couldn't. He could never get a job. You know why? Because he had nothing to do to prepare for that. And his mom came to me and she said, can you help me? We're getting ready to get him into college and everything. And I said, I have been telling him for the last 3 years that he needs to start producing something of value so that you can produce. And he's like, because he didn't ever want to focus on one project. So I said, okay, how about this? How about you blog about your discoveries? How about you write notes about that? We're going to get onto that whole topic. But how about you document just for yourself your personal discoveries and your learning experiments that you're doing? And he's like, why would I write that down? I'm like, just for your own sake. I mean, imagine yourself, you're like an old school scientist, right? And you are learning new things all the time, and you're writing your stuff down, and you just happen to make it public, and it didn't have to be a Zettelkasten. It could just be notes, right? You just write your notes down in the form of a blog. When you come to a point where you feel like you've kind of put to bed this idea, you can write about it, and then you can demonstrate, one, that you know how to communicate, which, that was his challenge. And two, that you can actually communicate about the idea to somebody else in a way that would have value to them potentially, so they want to employ you. And then you put a link to that blog, or you refer to that information, to your journal or whatever you want to call it, your academic journal, and then you refer to that in your thing. And then when I'm writing a referral for you, I'm saying he has regularly devoted himself to learning lab experimentation, and exploring different concepts to a level, and then documenting his discoveries as he's gone and sharing it with the public. I mean, that's something that I can really get behind as somebody who wants to help other people trust him as well as me. Because I mean, a lot of times he was telling me stuff, and I didn't have the ability to dive into it and get to understand it or to trust it better. But if I had had sort of a lay person's explanation of the highest level, and then it was just one approach to a problem. Most people don't have this problem, who are preparing to get jobs or to go to college or something, because they are producing silly software. And by the way, just because we're going to talk about this later, but just because it's silly doesn't mean it's bad, right? Just because it's like, some game or something like that. Those things demonstrate, motivation and passion, and, the desire to share it and everything. So those things they work. And potential employers, if they can see that you learn how to do a thing, even if it's a silly game, they'll understand that you have the capacity to be taught to learn something else. And the good employers would never hire you just for a language unless they're really in a bind. They would hire you for your ability to learn and your ability to code and your passion. And those are the things that they're looking for. That they're not even really, they're looking for mental aptitude and intelligence, but they're mostly looking for a good work ethic and proof that you can be trusted and the ability to communicate. And some of those things are lacking, and you need to be able to produce those things. So that's how employment happens. That's the story. What happened to my friend? He didn't get into the colleges that he wanted to, which is really sad. There's a couple of colleges he ended up wanting to go to, so he fell back to going to his to Columbia, where his family was all went to Columbia. He didn't really have to. This is horrible to say, but he didn't have to prove himself as much to get into Columbia as he did some of these other schools he wanted to go to, because his family had been going to Columbia forever. I think somebody may have even taught there, and so yeah, he got into Columbia like that, which is another. We could talk about why Ivy League schools are a waste of time and energy and money, and that's one of the reasons people get in there. And you get in there, you work hard, and you get in there, and somebody else gets in there just because they knew somebody or their mom and dad went there, and now you're working with this person, and they're on the same team as you, and both of you are contributing to your grades, and I don't want to be around those people. I mean, I really like this guy a lot. He was a real genius. I would never want to work with him. And I tried really, really hard for him to help him understand. It's going to take a very unique work environment for that particular person, because he lacked so many of the other skills that are critical to an employment. And building trust was one of them. He had all of the raw capacity to be, a six-figure employed, first job kind of person, but he had none of the ability to produce trust in the people that would hire him to do stuff for them, because he hadn't focused on that, because he didn't feel like it was important. And I, when I left, I hope he's changed since then, but when I left him, he never really got it. He never really saw how important it is to focus on that relationship building and building trust and producing proof that you can do the job. Not just get the job. I'm not arguing that with you.